go over some of the fundamental elements and some of the reasoning behind why I've made some of the choices I have and developed a technique. And some of the things are very simple. Just as when we were growing up as children, we probably only had one pencil to work with. Even in school, at the office, in the home, we would have that one pencil, probably a number 2 or something. And we would try to do everything we could with that one pencil. If we wanted to make something darker, we'd just press harder. The other thing about it is we didn't really think about the angle that we're holding the pencil. And our tendency is to hold this pencil down here at very close proximity to the point, so that we have a tendency to point the pencil towards the paper, having it more perpendicular to the paper. And as we are down here like this, we don't have as light a touch. There's all kinds of things that can happen, but we're apt to damage the paper. I want to be able to protect the surface of my paper at all cost, because damage keeps me from being able to make the changes that I'd like to make. And I don't always make all the right choices as I start out my picture. I want to be able to see it develop and be able to modify a few things and maybe make some wholesale changes. I don't want to do that with the idea that I'm now going to have a picture that is less than ideal and show all those scarred places where I tried to change something, where I tried to erase something, where I pressed too hard with my pencil and actually damaged the paper, making score marks and little ditches. So let me go ahead and show you a few of the things that I not only still hear, but I've also experienced myself. Our tendency is to try very hard. We try so hard that we actually are trying to control our pencil. We're trying to control everything we're doing. We think if we try harder that will help. And often it just adds an unrealistic tension that interferes with what I call a flow and grace to our stroke. I often hear that people say they can't draw a straight line, and I've been determined over the years to have as much accuracy as I can, and thought I could do a pretty good job. But I'll just go ahead and illustrate just a little bit what I'm talking about and kind of exaggerate a few things so that you'll see in the video what I'm talking about. If I wanted to draw a straight line, and I'm doing it in the old-fashioned way, I would probably do a pretty decent job at it being straight, but you'll see that there are waves. There are little variations. It looks pretty forced. And I want to be able to have something that complements a human body, and most of what I would ever draw, regardless of the subject matter, a lot better than something that looks like I tried hard but I didn't quite accomplish what I wanted to do. So I want to just show you a stroke that complements the human form so much better. And it's a stroke with a lot of flow and grace to it. Well, one of the things I'm going to do to help give me that flow and grace, that natural stroke, one that doesn't look like I struggled with it or is so forced and has all the tension to it, is to change where I'm gripping my pencil. Instead of like this, where we probably just naturally gravitated to, because again, we're trying hard, and we just get used to that end, and it just feels awkward if we do anything else. But I have changed my grip, and I get back here on this back half of the pencil. You'll notice it's just about halfway. And this is what I call the flow and grace end of my pencil. This lower part, the part that goes from the halfway point down to the tip, is the control end. And I can have entirely too much control, where if I work hard, I can have all the flow and grace in my stroke that I want and have just enough control to put it where I want. So this is what I would be able to accomplish as a contrast to this line if I hold my pencil differently and I change some of the dynamics. I'm just going to glide onto the paper and glide off, just like an airplane landing. There's a curve to it. There's a wonderful taper at each end. This is going to, as we go through this method, open up, I hope, so many new opportunities for you that you'll just want to practice it and get better and better at it. Again, this is my very controlled stroke, and I've been misled to believe that I can't draw a straight line, and realize that I don't need to. I can get a ruler out if I want to do that. And I would rather have something that, again, it complements the human form so much better and opens up, again, so many options to me that I'll have a real good time showing you, and I hope you'll be able to see clearly as I go through these demonstrations. Now, one of the detrimental effects to pointing the pencil so directly at the paper, being down here at this end, is again damaging it, scoring it. Scoring would be like making a groove in your paper, just the same as if I took my fingernail and I just pressed it into the paper. And now when I draw across it, I'm going to see that line through all of my work, either showing up as a white space in there or else showing a little dark place where it catches on the edge of that ditch. But let me go ahead and just do a couple simple little eyes. These are going to be so basic, they're actually going to be kind of silly, but I want to really put the point to the paper and show you what I'm talking about. And it's surprising how many people draw like this. I have probably had a tendency to do this early on, and then I realized that I wanted to have a whole nother quality to it, and so I changed a lot of things. As you watch me do this, you'll see a lot of things that I'm going to refer to, and you'll recognize them as I ask you to change some of these fundamental elements to my drawing. So let's go ahead and put this other one over here. And now that I've done this, I'm starting to think, well, maybe I need to move one of the eyes. Maybe as I develop a number of things, I'm trying to fit the bridge of the nose in here, and I have the eyebrows and different elements of the face. I realize that maybe I want to change one of my eyes and move it over just ever so slightly. So let's go ahead and see what happens. As you can see, I am probably going to have the old drawing show through, even though all I wanted to do was move the eye over. And now I'll always see the place that I, in my mind, made a mistake, because it's glaring. It's never going to go away. The damage will never go away. And if I tried to really use maybe an abrasive eraser or anything to try and get rid of this, because I'm determined to get it off so it won't attract attention, I'm probably going to actually change the surface of the paper so that when I do put my new eye in there, that it won't have the same quality and the same look as it would have had I never damaged the paper. So I really want to realize that I'm going to have to do something to change those effects, and that is backing off on the pressure, changing the angle of my pencil. As I was telling you, I want to get back here and have all the control, just enough control to have all the flow and grace I want and put it where I want. And I can do that if I practice and not have my control just dominating me. One of the very fundamental things that I wanted to change was that idea that, well, I've got to get this done. I have a large area to do. I think what I'll do is I'll just color in a larger area by using the side of my pencil, the flat side of my lead. And so I'm just going to come in here and right on the top. The darker the pencil I have, the worse that, or the more that texture is going to show up, because it's creating more and more contrast as this pencil lays on top and just hits the mountaintops of my texture, my tooth. It will actually create that much more contrast with the places that are voids, the little valleys, and because of that contrast, the texture is going to become very noticeable. And so I don't want this happening every time I'm drawing. There might be an exception, and I might decide that I want to use this texture, and then I'll make that choice. But I don't want this happening just because. Let me show you something else that might illustrate what I'm talking about in utilizing the texture. Well, this texture right here is something I might use to my advantage, but I want it to be my decision. I don't want it to just be the way my pencil goes on the paper, because this is going to restrict many of the things that I want to be able to accomplish and express in my portrait. This will take away much of the effectiveness that I could have if I take some other things into consideration. But again, I might choose to use this in a very special way. And so then I want to know how my pencil is going to interact with the paper in all ways so that I can make those choices. So you'll notice that this texture, which is very prominent and quite contrasty, is really the same thing that I utilized here. This is exactly the same texture that I've actually used to my advantage when I did this hat. And it's interesting that our minds will perceive what we want to perceive based on our experience. This is really interesting. This is a very simple illustration as to how we can create an illusion and actually convince our minds that we're seeing what we want it to see and what it expects to see without having actually created it. Because as I told you, when I'm putting this pencil on the side and I'm writing on the top, the mountain peaks of the texture, the high points are actually what's catching the graphite. The light parts are the recesses in actuality. Those are the places that my flat pencil didn't reach down into, and they're left white. But we perceive it as the dark parts are the recesses, the shadowed areas, and the tops are the places that are the highlights. And it's just the opposite. And so this is just one tiny little glimpse into what will be many, many, many illusions we'll be able to create and utilize and really take advantage of as we make a very effective portrait. So that's one of the things. Okay, one of the other things is that if I choose the appropriate pencil, I can come up with a subtle texture that will simulate other things. One of them being skin texture. So our harder pencils actually ride in and out of those valleys and over the hilltops and in the valleys and over the tops of the peaks better, and it has much more coverage, a more even coverage than my very dark soft pencils. But if I want to create a gradation, I can go ahead and refine this, and if I utilize the paper right, I will actually be creating something that still has texture. It's just not real obvious. It's very subtle. And it's more like this. As you see, the texture I'm left with for my cheek, my face, skin texture. Things that have just enough variance and inconsistency that makes it lifelike. if I made it too uniform and I didn't take advantage of my texture, I might very well feel, if I knew any better, I would feel like, wow, there's something missing in my picture. I think that I should go ahead and create pores, like I saw the texture on the skin texture on that picture. It's because it's giving you the impression that those are pores and little variances like freckles and hair and things like that that will give a wonderful inconsistency that gives it a life and vibrancy. But if I felt I really needed that, it would be absolutely ridiculous for me to try and create it. And I came in here and say, well, I better have pores, so I'm going to create all these dots. What a job that would be. That would just be totally ridiculous to expect to come into your picture now and create something like that to create a realistic skin texture. I don't want to have to come in here and do something that could happen easily all by itself if I used a pencil right. It's just inadvertent. It just is automatic and much more uniform than I could ever do if I tried to manufacture them. And besides that, when I get finished with something like that, it actually looks more like blackheads than pores. So that isn't really very effective and not a very good efficient use of your time. I want to be able to accomplish a number of things when I draw, all at the same time, so that I'm not having to think about every individual element and making sure that that's right and that's right. I might during my practice, and if I practice enough, all those things will come together and it'll become very natural and just automatic. So you might say, well, I know what I could do with this texture or this one. I could go ahead and create something that is going to look pretty smooth by using tortillons. And I think that probably keeps us from doing a lot of things or having a lot of the opportunities that we could have, because we're going to fall back on something that I feel is actually quite limited. It may solve one problem, but it's actually going to create many others. And I don't want to come in here and expect to just be able to put down a value that I didn't have to take that much care in applying and just smooth it out. There's several things that are going to happen if I were to do this. I'm going to create quite an artificial surface. It's real easy to have it almost become like a wax figure and take away some of that wonderful, fresh, subliminal texture that I would have had I created it with my pencil alone and not tried to rub it or burnish it with some device. So there's another problem with this. As I'm coloring in a large area, my tendency probably is to do something like this. And you'll notice that I'm not picking my pencil up. It's what I call scrubbing. And unless, again, there was some strange reason why you would need that, and you want to know that you could use it if it was useful, but for a specific reason, that I don't want to scrub, because I'll never have the opportunity to have these transitional edges that I have with a value put down, building off of my stroke with all the flow and grace. I call it my tapered stroke. And I build off of that in many directions, and it is really one of the fundamental elements of my technique. But if I'm scrubbing like this, I don't have the wonderful opportunity to continue on. Let me go ahead and take a little lighter pencil so that it isn't quite so dominant here. Let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. Let's turn it this way. I'm going to put a paper underneath my hand so I don't drag the graphite around with my hand. Now let me show you something that is constructed completely different than that scrubbing. I want to be able to build off of my tapered stroke. And my tapered stroke has that wonderful taper to it at each end that just opens up all kinds of wonderful opportunities for me. These become very graceful. This is a stroke that isn't forced and contrived. It isn't all jagged because I'm trying so hard. I'm way back here on the back half of my pencil, the flow and grace end of my pencil. And now I want to be able to build off of that. So if I were to do that, I am going one direction and repeating my stroke over and over and over again. And yes, we'll get into how I'm going to build this. It's going to be one of the practice elements that I want you to just tuck away and go back and practice it every so often, because this will really continue to improve your skill and your effectiveness. But if I make this patch, there's something very interesting that happens. It isn't long enough. I want to make it longer. I can. Do you know why? Because I created a soft end, and now I'm going to be able to add on to that, because I'm going to add a taper, my lighter ends, to what is lighter on the bottom of the last one. And I'm going to be able to extend it indefinitely without you ever really noticing where I put them together. And let's just say it still isn't long enough. I'm going to extend it even more. I can continue extending this and extending this as far as I want without running into any problem with seeing where I joined it together. That, to me, is exciting and again opens up even more possibilities. If I was to use that scrubbing technique, look at what would happen. If I never pick my pencil up and I just start going back and forth, just to color in an area, it might be again because I just feel like, well, I can use my tortillon anyway. I'll just smooth it out. But let's go ahead and say, well, this isn't long enough. I think I'll extend it. It still isn't long enough. I think I'll extend it some more. And even more. I'm sure you can see what's happening. I'm ending up with joints, what I call tiling, where you see where each section fit together. If I wanted to do a wonderful contour on a face, and I had all these showing through in places I didn't want them to, just so that I could cover a larger and larger area, look how that would restrict me. And look at what an advantage my tapered stroke is, because I can go ahead and continue on and on and on and have a wonderful transition, always be left with an opportunity to extend it further if I want, where this ended up very blunt and it stopped suddenly. That is really going to restrict you. And yet everything could be utilized for a special purpose. So again, you'd want to know that if you needed to have that particular technique, that you could utilize this in that special place that you might come across once in a great while. I was teaching a little boy, and he saw very quickly that this has sections, and he thought, well, that looks like bamboo. And look at how easy you could make it into something that is quite different than what we originally intended. Now, this will introduce another element, the eraser. And one of the things about the eraser is that it's another one of those things that we've had from our earliest years and through school, in the office, and at home, or wherever. We pick up a pencil, and it had an eraser on the end of it. And what do we do with an eraser? We end up by trying to rub out a place that is damaged, a mistake, something we want to correct, we rub our eraser on it and it creates a very harsh edge again. And if I took out the mistake, now I have the challenge of trying to match up these clean edges that were created by the eraser by dragging it through, by swiping it and creating those harsh value edges. Now I want to be able to patch it up, and I may or may not be able to do a good job of it, but if I looked closely I probably would see that there's still a place where it joins together, a tiling, so to speak, that I'm not going to be able to really get rid of. So now let me show you one of the wonderful advantages of the eraser. The eraser, as I've probably shown you in the materials and how to use them, I want you to form it in a teardrop. This is going to be your most useful shape. I want this to be very round. Almost get fanatical about it. The rounder this end, and you can change the diameter of it depending on where you're going to be working, in what kind of a space. It might be a little narrower and it might be a little wider, depending on, again, the kind of an area you're working in. But I want you to get this very round. And then we're going to use our eraser in a different way, a totally different way. We're not going to swipe it through there. We might clean up some things after we get the majority of the lead off. But because I'm going to be very careful not to put too much pressure with my pencil, and I'm just laying the graphite on the top of those peaks on my paper, just laying it on there, I should be able to basically pick it off. Just lift it off the paper instead of having to scrub with my eraser. Those erasers on the end of our pencils not only gave a harsh edge often when we were erasing something, but it and did not give us that nice transitional edge, which I hope you'll see, but it could very well smooth out the paper as it basically grinds off the top surface. It may not seem like it, but as you start drawing and you want to utilize the texture and have all the opportunity you can have with this technique, you'll realize just how much you may have been altering the surface of your paper. And when you alter it, you may not have the same thing you started out with. So again, I want to guard my texture. I want to protect the paper at all costs so that I can, even at the very last, maybe even make some very significant changes in my picture and repair it or replace it, and no one will even know I did it, instead of having those scarred areas like we did with the eyes. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the way I'm using this. This is probably the basic way that I use this eraser. I will tap it. Remember, I have a very round end, and because it's round on the end, I'm going to be able to have it taper away from the paper. It's going to have a natural opportunity to create a transitional edge, a soft edge, a vignette. And so I can also vary how much I'm taking off and kind of blend that back in by removing that lead into my previous work, just by regulating the amount of pressure I'm using. And you'll hear that I'm getting a little lighter as I go, a little lighter tap. I might get harder in the middle. It will go down in the recesses of the paper and take off a little more. But watch what I get to do now. I'm going to use my brush just to get off, do a little house cleaning, get the dust, the fragments of my eraser I may not really see, but it'll still affect how well my pencil goes onto the paper. I want to brush that off just with some light airy strokes. I don't want to do anything close to burnishing. So now I'm going to come in here with my tapered stroke into that place. And watch what happens. I basically have the same effect that I had when I wanted to extend my value, because I always had a soft end to add on to and take it a little further. Now I've created those soft ends in here. I've shortened up my stroke a little bit, but I'm overlapping my previous work with my new area I'm working on. I'm replacing it with. And now you won't even see where I made those changes. And I think that is a wonderful thing, because again, I have just given myself many more options. It just opened up all kinds of new possibilities. Now, we can take our eraser and actually make a blade out of it too. I can take this end. I could actually take this, and I want you to practice with it. Just pick off maybe a little dot, something that was a slight little variation, and just be able to come in there and regulate the pressure so that you don't end up with a white dot, and just lift off again something that's a little darker. And that's going to be a real good opportunity for you to just take off something that is almost a distraction in the middle of a wonderful contour like a cheek or a forehead, something you don't want to be somebody to think that it's a mole or a freckle or just a mistake. So you can go ahead and remove those very easily. But now I want to be able to take my eraser and I'm going to fold that over and I'm going to pinch it and make a very substantial blade. And by substantial, I just want it to have enough stability and not be this real thin thing that won't hold up. But I want it to have a real edge, a real blade on the end. And then I can come through this work and I can take out a fine line, a fine thin space out of my work. And this is a wonderful opportunity to create and clean up things like highlighted hairs. And as you look at some of my work, now that you know, you'll start recognizing that I've utilized this method for creating some of those fine hair highlights, or I may have created the space or that lighter hair up to a point, but I just want to clean it up to get the brightest part of an apex, the brightest part of a curve. So this is one more option that we've just opened up with being able to remove the lead because we did not press too hard, and it will come off. Okay, this is something else that I want to really think about, is to not have everything become so random that I really don't know what to expect. I guess some people might call it artistic license, but when I'm trying to do something very accurate and I'm trying to capture those little nuances in a face, those things that really suggest the character, those character traits that are so important, I want to be able to accurately demonstrate those in my picture. Sometimes it's those tiny little things that will either capture or totally miss the personality. So I want to really know how to use my pencil. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is to standardize everything as much as I can and have a solid base to work from. And as I get very good at it, I've practiced it enough to have it become very natural, then I'll be able to think about expressing my picture. I'll be able to interpret it much better because I'm not having to think about all those little fundamental elements. It's just the way my pencil goes on the paper and the way I go ahead and execute my drawing. So I want you to, again, become very comfortable and know the angle you're going to use, the angle of your stroke. So when I'm planning my hand down, and I'm going to show you just exactly how to do this later, if I'm standardizing and I want to be able to plant my hand down and to be able to really do the same thing pretty much each time, so I know what my stroke is. And I will suggest this many times: use your best stroke, use your best taper, and I want you to be able to recognize that. So now let's just put on a simple oval here to just suggest the shape of a head. Now, one of the reasons I want you to recognize your stroke is that if that is my stroke and that's my angle and that's my curve, I might be able to lengthen it and shorten it a little bit, but for the most part I want to recognize that, and I want to start contouring this face. I'm going to naturally want to put this where it complements my stroke the best. And I don't, well, I'll show you just right. So I'm figuring it must be right in here. Now you probably noticed that every time I'm actually doing something, when I was doing that gradation and I was extending it and extending it and extending it, one thing that you may not have noticed is that I'm always trying to see some contour and curve to my stroke. If I'm building something with contour, something with a gradation, something that changes in value so that it isn't all the same color. I don't want anything to be the same color because everything that's the same color is flat. And so I want to be able to utilize my best stroke, and I have this natural tendency to develop the full value as I linger there, and then I'm going to start coming away from that leading edge, and I'm going to have it fade away. Well, right away I start seeing something that constitutes curve and contour. But now, if I want to come up here, I would have to change my stroke, and I would actually have to start changing the angle of my hand to accommodate this if I refuse to move. And I want to keep my picture in the same place, my drawing in the same angle. So this means that I'm going to have to come up with another stroke that I'm going to have to become very good at. And if I'm down here, I'm going to have to turn and come up with a whole new stroke that I'm going to have to hopefully get good at. And maybe even over here. And if my stroke is curved this way, then why would I want to naturally use it in a part of the face that curves the opposite way? I might be able to do it, but it still wouldn't be as much of a benefit if I have opposing curves. So what I want you to do, and I really want you to develop these habits right to begin with, is every time you see a shape that allows you to start developing a curve or something that's a circle or oval or something that's rounder than just straight, I want you to make sure that your picture accommodates your stroke and not make your stroke accommodate the picture. In most cases, you're always going to benefit, because as I move this around, now I get to position it so that I can indeed use my best stroke. I'm going to become a whole lot better at practicing one stroke and becoming just good at it than to try to have a dozen strokes that I will never be quite as good at. And so this opens up some new possibilities. Not only do I have the opportunity to create this contour over here on this side, complementing this side of that ellipse or that circle, but I don't have to become Houdini to do it. I don't have to go ahead and practically stand on my head or go into contortions just to try and reach into another area. It just wouldn't be as good. Now, this is one of the other hidden benefits if you haven't seen it already. If I turn my picture around like this, and at the same time, if I'm working from a photograph or whatever source material I have, I want to make sure that it's in the same orientation. You know what orientation means? I'm having it in the same position. If this face now is sideways and in a horizontal position, I want my source to be in exactly the same position. I don't want to have it over here at another angle and expect to be able to see accurately when I'm looking right down here and I start noticing angles that maybe I didn't notice before. Maybe they're a little off and I didn't see it. I'm going to notice values. I'm going to notice how shapes fit together. All the different things that I would never have really seen if I didn't take it out of the perspective that I had when I never moved my picture. And so those are a few of the real benefits to recognizing your stroke and making sure that you utilize it. There's more benefits than this, but these are just a couple of the real obvious ones, and I hope that you'll be able to incorporate that into how you approach your drawing. One of the other very important things that I've alluded to during this demonstration is that if I have the desire to control my stroke in the wrong way, I'm probably going to end up with something that is quite unnatural, maybe looking forced and something that looks like it has a lot of tension to it. And that's probably a telltale sign that that's actually what's happening. I want to have all the control that I can possibly have. Remember what I said about utilizing my wonderful flow and grace, my tapered stroke, and having all the flow and grace I can possibly have, because it's always going to be a benefit, with just enough control to put it where I want. I don't want control to dominate. I just want to utilize just enough of it to be able to have that wonderful natural quality to my picture, knowing I can put that where I want. And so that is really the difference. When you hear me say I want you to be in control, I don't mean to tense up and determine that you're going to be able to do this, but to have practiced and know what to expect, and to be able to have something that you can alter, you can change, you can emphasize, you can de-emphasize, anything you want to do for the most part on your picture you will be able to do because you stayed in control. One of the things that I want to stay in control about is to utilize my contrast, my values. And it's real important that I get through to you that when I'm starting my picture, I will almost always put my lightest pencil in the darkest area first. It's an interesting thing that, it seems probably kind of a dichotomy, kind of a contradiction, and in your mind, that I'm going to use my lightest pencil to work on the darkest places. But actually it works quite well, because anything I put on this paper initially is going to contrast only with the paper, and so it's going to actually look dark. Now I'm going to take my 4H pencil and I'm just going to create a light tone on here. Even though it's very light, it only contrasts with the paper, and so it looks darker. I have nothing else to compare it to, so it's the darkest thing on the paper. And so if I utilize this and I pick out all the darkest places in my picture to start with, then this is going to do just fine, because it's going to appear as the darkest places in my picture. And so I'm just real, I'm going to have a real advantage of doing this. And by starting out so lightly and having it appear just the way I want it to, darker, I'm going to be in control. If I'm patient and build up that value gradually until it's just right, I'm going to be in control. That's the good kind. But now, I think I've created quite a value on here. And I think you'll see that as I apply it, I'm always trying to apply something that has contour and curve to it. I have told you I'm obsessed with curve in this good way. The curve is just so beneficial in their drawings that I always want to see it. Even if I couldn't see it in my source material, if I incorporate it into my drawing, I'll probably have an advantage. And if I don't, and everything's the same color, and there's no contour to it, I'm probably going to have a disadvantage, because there are no flat places on a person. Even though our photographs sometimes will lie to us and make it seem as though something is without contour and very flat. I want you to think about this and be obsessed with it right along with me, to the point where you'll always see curve even if you don't see it in your source. And there'll be some good rules to follow to try and accomplish this. But now I'm going to come back in here with my 4B, just for the sake of contrast and illustrating this point. This would be a rare thing that I would ever go right to the darkest value without building it up, layering it, and staying in control. But I just wanted to show you what happened to our value that we thought was so dark on this paper. It basically went away. It is because it became lighter because I contrasted it with something that was darker. And so this, I hope, will just kind of at least illustrate that I want to really become sensitive to slight variations in value. I want to be able to perceive where there's variations and know that even within a limited range of value that I can show a gradation, show the value change so that I can accomplish curve. And I want that to happen because I'm seeing it. I'm able to accomplish it because I know what to look for and I know what I'm trying to achieve. So this is just one more reason why we want to be very careful and not leap out to this, because we'll never know how it's going to contrast with something else if we just go for it and say, well, I'm going to work in a dark area, I'm going to do this first. I may not even have to do half that value to illustrate that it's quite dark. It depends on its surroundings, its environment, and what I'm trying to accomplish. So this is just another way we want to stay in control and not have our drawing control us. So I hope that this may have cleared up a few things, helped you understand where I'm coming from as I continue to emphasize these different things as we work through our drawing demonstration. All of these things are going to apply, and we're going to build off of all of these fundamental elements. And if you're very careful to practice each one and get good at it, it'll help you to keep expanding and expanding and become so versatile that you can draw virtually anything you want with that natural quality, with all the flow and grace that is possible. So I'll see you in the next demo.